Hi, my name is Imran Haq. Welcome to another episode of The Voice of a Leader, a series where I interview high-achieving leaders and try and find out how they got to where they are. Our world is a beautiful place and has sustained life for more than 2 million years. However, humans have caused a lot of damage to the environment. For example, every day on average, around 27,000 trees are cut down just to make toilet paper. And also, when people throw plastic bags into the ocean, around 1,000 sea creatures are killed annually. This week, I caught up with Aaron Wood, who is an environmental counsellor for the City of Melbourne. Aaron, welcome to The Voice of a Leader.
Thanks for having me.
You were brought up on the bank of the Murray River, and over time, unfortunately, it's gained a lot of pollution, and because of that reason, it was a catalyst for you to become an environmentalist. What type of pollution did you see happen in the river, and do you know what caused it?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to grow up on the banks of the River Murray, and literally that was my front yard. The family home was on Kings Billabong, which is just outside of Mildura in northwest Victoria. And when you think about the River Murray, it's hugely significant. Over half of the agricultural produce in Australia comes from the Murray-Darling Basin. And you know, when I was very young, I would swim in that billabong every day, and it was just a beautiful place to grow up in. But you know, unfortunately, it's very topical at the moment. In fact, that a blue-green algal bloom was happening on the billabong at the time, and I jumped into the water and sort of came out with a rash from head to toe.
Oh gosh.
That had been caused by a lot of the runoff from overuse of fertilisers from the surrounding districts, and you know, that was a sort of realisation even from a very young age that we impact our environment. You know, it doesn't have to be overtly sort of dropping rubbish. Just by living our lifestyles and the way we do live our lifestyles, we have an environmental impact. So, you know, that sort of set me out on the path that I am today. It wasn't like I suddenly then made the decision that I wanted to be an environmentalist or go into the environmental industry, but it had a huge impact on the direction that I've taken in my life.
I was going to say, when you were a kid, you were considered quite naughty.
Yes, that is true.
And I think at the high school you were studying at, your dad, in order to try and discipline you, he became the principal.
It was actually at my primary school.
Oh, your primary school, sorry.
Yeah.
But unfortunately it backfired because I believe you thought you were invincible.
I did.
And you were a bit of a bully, is that right?
I'm not proud to say that, once my dad was my primary school principal, I sort of felt like, that my dad will sort of help me out. But interestingly enough, he was actually harder on me from a leadership sense because he was my father. So, he would say, look, Aaron, I really need you to be an example for the other kids. Sure. So I joke that, the only good outcome was when I forgot my lunch money. But secretly, I loved having my dad as my principal. And, indeed, he's actually gone on and we've actually, formed a business together in Kids Teaching Kids. And he's just an unbelievable educator, fantastic father, and has taught me so many life lessons that I carry with me to this day.
So I guess he's like a bit of a mentor to you.
He's absolutely. When people ask who my mentors are, and often people ask, who are your business mentors, and I've certainly got a few of those over the years, and political mentors. But I think the impact that your parents have on you, and I think we're all a little bit biased. We like to talk about our mums and dads as being the best, but in all honesty, I couldn't have hoped for a better upbringing, and to this day, he's a real sounding board for me. So if I do an interview or, I do a presentation or I have an issue in the workplace that I need to work through, he's one of the first people that I'll call.
Excellent. So your dedication to the environment, you've won many, many awards, one of which I think you were selected to participate in the Al Gore Climate Change Leadership Program.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What was that experience
Amazing.
like?
Look, each year I try and stretch myself a little bit, whether it's doing the company directors course or being elected to Melbourne City Council. Each year I kind of set myself a challenge to push myself out of the comfort zone, and the Al Gore Climate Leadership Program was one of those a few years back, and it was an amazing couple of days where Al Gore actually came out and personally ran the course.
Nice.
To spend time with him and to actually get to reconnect with him at the recent Paris Climate Summit was amazing.
Yep.
I was over there for COP21, and I walked into a meeting sort of not knowing what the meeting, it was called Executive Dialogues, and I walk into the meeting, Al Gore's the chair.
That's crazy.
Huge companies, Google, Facebook, Philips Lighting, all talking about how business and all levels of government can work better to address climate change. The great thing was that I mentioned to him that I was part of the Al Gore Climate Leadership Program, and he was so warm about it, thanking me and asking me how that I'd gone, and and indeed updating on how that program's going.
So he's very easy to approach.
Yeah, I've found him very approachable, and I think, if you talk about leadership, there's a guy who, had his absolute aspirations kind of crashed on the rocks. He came within an absolute hair's breadth of being President of the United States of America, and he openly talks about going into depression after losing that battle, to almost reinvent himself, to set himself on the path to, tackle climate change and to tell that story to the masses. I think is hugely admirable, and he's doing the job to this day. He continues to do it day in, day out, telling anyone who'll listen about this huge crisis that we have to address, both from an environmental point of view, an economic point of view, and certainly from a social and wellbeing point of view.
I was going to say, once I expand to going international, I'll interview him.
Absolutely. He's an amazing guy because, he understands politics, but I think he also, he's got a great way of telling stories. Obviously, The Inconvenient Truth was a watershed moment
I watched that,
in the debate about climate change. But he constantly works with him and his great team around him on how do I tell the story to motivate those people that are still unmotivated, or in fact aren't just unmotivated, are actually actively trying to stop us tackling climate change.
Good. So as you mentioned before, you're currently a councillor for the City of Melbourne. What type of work do you do?
I'm actually the chair of the environment portfolio, so it was a portfolio I fought hard to get. I asked the Lord Mayor if I could take that portfolio on, and got that portfolio. So in that, water, waste, energy, biodiversity, emissions reduction, renewable energy, all the topics that I absolutely love. But that again has been a real stretch of my skill set. Understanding sort of projects and outcomes, and that's one thing. Understanding how politics works has been a real eye-opener for me, but I'm coming into the 4th year of that term.
Oh, well done.
And, I'm going to be able to point to some really great achievements. Obviously supported very well by the officers who do the hard work, but, things like implementing a renewable energy target for the City of Melbourne for the first time in its history. We're just about to go to market with a group buy for renewable energy, where 15 different organisations have come together to use their purchasing power to drive renewable energy investment. We're doing amazing things with parks and gardens and open space and stormwater collection, and I guess really setting up the world's most livable city to hopefully climb up the rankings in terms of sustainability.
Good. I was going to say, I don't notice much grey hair. So.
There's a little bit less here, though, I can tell you. I look back, they have the photos when you first start, and I just noticed that I was all happy and smiling and sort of had a lot more hair, and now I look at my photo today and I think, it does take its toll. So.
Oh, good. Just for someone who's keen to be in your position, say a councillor of the City of Melbourne, and who also has a passion for the environment, what's some words of advice you'd give them?
I'll make the most of the opportunities. It's funny because people, will meet me and they'll say, "Oh, wow, your CV, you've achieved a lot," and yet, I came from a small country town. My high school had 400 students in it. I wasn't the best student at university, hands down. Wasn't the best student at university. I did forest science there. But I just, every day, if I see something come my way, I grab it with both hands. A chance to meet someone, to network, to take on a new role, to stretch myself. I think, my strong message to anyone is that you don't have to be some amazing, highly skilled, highly qualified, highly educated person to make the absolute most of yourself. Grab every opportunity with both hands. Be respectful. Be a nice person. I don't think you have to tread on people to get to the top. That's another misnomer for me. I mean, maybe that's true in some areas of business, but I find if you treat people with respect and stay true to your values, that's the other thing. Even with politics, one thing that I can put my hand on my heart at the end of this term is that I've voted based on the things that I think are the right outcome for the long term, not for the next 2 or 3 years, but for the next 10 or 20 years.
Excellent. And just a final question. So Melbourne was successful enough to win the 2017 Eco City Wheel Summit.
Yes, very proud of that.
You're the chairman, aren't you?
Yes.
What's some of the topics on the agenda? Would you like to release that?
Yeah. Look, it's a great thing for us to get because it's one of the longest running environmental conferences in the world. Literally thousands of people will descend on Melbourne for this event, and it'll consider every topic you can think about. Renewable energy, a real focus on the built environment. So what role do cities play? And cities are more than 70% of the emissions when you talk about global emissions.
Oh, wow.
So yes, nations had to sign up to those agreements, but the battle for the environment, for climate change, will be won and lost in our cities. So I think, transforming the economy, public transport, mobility, how do we move people around? But what I love about it is it's what will the future look like?
Yeah, sure.
Fossil fuels and sort of doing business the old way, you sort of stay in that area at your own peril. And this is not a sort of a political statement or even a left or right, this is just about yesterday's business versus tomorrow's business. I firmly want to be in tomorrow's business.
Very good. Excellent. Look, Aaron, thank you once again for your time. Hopefully if we meet again, you still have your hair.
I hope so too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again. Thank you for watching another episode of The Voice of a Leader. Very, very inspirational and passionate person, Aaron. I really liked how he emphasized that anyone can be a leader. All you need is a lot of passion, such as himself. You don't need to be an intelligent person, just a lot of drive. Thank you again for watching this episode. Remember, if you or someone you know is a high-achieving leader and would like to have an interview with me, please visit my website, answer 3 questions, and send an email to thevoiceofaleader@gmail.com. Don't forget to like my Facebook page and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you're kept up to date with the series. Thank you again for watching. Goodbye for now.